Hey, it's Mr. Canada to you, punk, and you're listening to This Week in Geek.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them. They never rent quality flicks. They always pick the most intellectually devoid movie on the racks.
And now, on with the show.
伝えたいことあるんなら歌ってみるのもありなんじゃね。
それが恋と知ってしまったなら
野球やんねえと時計が止まってるみてえだ。
言葉を歌に。
私も成瀬さんの気持ちわかる気がしたから。
何か言ってよ。反抗するならしてよ。
封印を破った君への痛みだ。
私の気持ち本当に喋りたいこと。
無理してでも頑張ってたあいつを見てたからどうしてもあいつに舞台に立ってほしいんだ。待ってろ成瀬。みんな待ってるよ。お前のこと待ってる。
No! Could this mean that we're really...
That we're in our dreams, that guy and I...
That we're in our dreams, that girl and I... We're switching places?
Can you taste until this day? Been looking everywhere for you. I follow the sound.
There's one thing I'm certain of. If we see each other, we'll definitely know right away.
I wanted to tell you that wherever you are in the world, I swear that I'll find you again, no matter what.
Who are you? Can I ask you your name?
Well, a gal. I mean, a guy.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net's Loose Cannon, the show that is dedicated to the unusual things you might find on the video store shelf, maybe on a streaming site, or maybe you've got that friend that happens to have that box of bootleg Roger Corman Fantastic Four movies hidden behind his couch next to copies of the Star Wars Holiday Special. But in this edition, is kind of coming at a weird time of year, mostly because I wanted to try something different. And that's kind of the thing that I love about the show Loose Cannon is I get a chance to experiment. And join me in this adventure of emotion, and that's the only way I can really describe today. I'm joined by my co-host from this anime podcast.
It's Ken.
So yes, obviously we're going to be doing some anime, and that seems just to be the theme with like me, Ken, and JT. We'll be doing anime, although here further on the show for most of the rest of the month, we should be doing something on horror director Mick Garris and the lifetimes and films of John Carpenter. We'll be focusing on him with the Angry Video Game Nerd Halloween special coming out later on this month. I still have to edit that. So, I asked Ken a couple weeks ago after we did the unusual musicals episode where he exposed me to Repo the Genetic Opera, as well as what was the other one called again?
The other one,
the robot one. The singing robot. Help me out here.
God damn it. What the fuck did we cover? Shit.
Anyway, go back and find the episode. So whenever Ken exposed that to me, I was thinking, you know what? I'm curious because I've had a subscription to Crunchyroll for a little while. I've had press access to Funimation for like a decade, but I've never really explored the back catalog. So I said to Ken, one of the things that I found out about myself within the last year is I've been taking creative writing at a local college, which I'm going to be graduating probably by the spring, by the way things are currently looking at it. And I discovered I have a real love of the romance subgenre. And you're probably saying, but Michael, it's not RoboCop, Aliens, or the Power Rangers. I know. Weird, right? So while I'm not big on romance movies, it's very hard to find one that hits with me in just the right way. Just because all I see, oh, that's that good looking actor, he does this, or it's so tropey where it's not even entertaining. To me, finding a good romance movie is remarkably hard. So I asked Ken, who pretty much him and Alex are my go to guys when it comes to movies. I'm like, Ken, I have a mission for you. Should you choose to accept it? And well, you kind of don't have a choice here. I want to experience some romance anime because I know they exist and I know there's an entire genre category on these streaming services, but I've never explored it. The closest I've came, and this is going to out me as something ridiculous, I saw High School DxD. Not a romance anime. Holy shit, so not. And so not appropriate on so many levels. Just, that's Japan, and I guess they have a whole thing, so I don't know whether that's even appropriate to mention, but it's weird, I guess. I wanted something a little bit more serious. I wanted something a little bit more from the heart. And without dealing with like robots or aliens or, I don't know, people shouting kami kami ha. And Ken recommended 2 movies to me. Ken, what are those movies that we're going to be talking about today?
So we've got the Makoto Shinkai directed super hit, which is still one of like the top 10 highest grossing anime features, Your Name, and that was from 2016. I saw it in early 2017 because US release dates and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is the Mario Kata written dramedy romance movie called Anthem of the Heart, which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, after watching these 2 films, I watched Anthem of the Heart last night. I got a copy that Ken sent over to me, and unfortunately, it was missing some subtitles on it. So, but as Ken was telling me, when you watch this movie and you follow the characters' interactions, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to fill in the blanks as to what these characters are actually talking about or what they might be saying. Because I do not speak a lick of Japanese. I know a couple of words, and that's only because I'm a terrible weeb at times. And even then, you could revoke my weeb card at any time. So let's talk about Anthem of the Heart first. And Ken, I want you to summarize this movie as best you possibly can.
Oh boy, this is a fun one. I've always defined this as one of the hardest elevator pitch movies I will ever try and pitch to people. But I am pulling this directly from the official website. June is a girl whose words have been sealed away. She was once a very happy girl, but because of a certain thing she said when she was very young, her family was torn apart. One day, the Egg Fairy appeared in front of her and sealed away her ability to talk in order to stop her from hurting anybody else. Since this traumatic experience, June lives in the shadows away from the limelight. But one day, she is nominated to become an executive member of the Community Outreach Council. On top of that, June is also appointed to play the main lead in their musical.
And
yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
in the opening.
Yeah, and I didn't quite know what I was expecting, but when June came home and was all excited to tell her mom that she saw her dad up at this castle, which is just up on the hill, turns out in Japan, I guess this is a cultural thing. There's
It's a love hotel.
Yeah, it's a love hotel. And she was telling her mom, "Oh, I saw him there with a princess, but it wasn't you." And the mom's like, "June, you need to be quiet and you need to never speak about this again." And I was like, "Oh shit, did she just see what I think she saw?" And then a couple moments pass by and you see the dad comes home and there's a moving truck. And the mom is inside. She's obviously not saying anything. She walks away. and the kid's trying to be like, oh, I want you to come home, Daddy. I hope this doesn't last forever. And she's very excitable. And the father he looks at her, and you think he's going to say something inspirational or something to give the kid hope. This was a fucking slap in the face. You know this is all your fault. I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
This rips the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, world's worst dad.
I was like, oh my God, I did not expect that. And this movie takes a lot of twists and turns because finding love in high school at the best of times is difficult. And you see this girl who now believes she's under this quote unquote egg curse where she believes her words are going to hurt people. And that's the underlying theme of this movie, is that words can hurt, but words can also heal too. And there's a wonderful moment right at the end where June is talking to Sakumi, I think his name is, or Sagumi or something.
Sakagami.
Yeah.
Takumi.
And they're talking, and he's like, I want you to tell me everything that you're thinking. Let me have it. And she tells him from the very funny and mundane to the really, really, really serious. And I expected this to go a completely different direction because there's a line in the ending, or in this ending scene. It's kind of tropey, but I think in this instance it works. She admits her love for him, and he's like, thanks, but I'm in love with someone else. And I was like, holy shit! Can this girl not catch a fucking break? And you get this cast of characters that all come across as really believable. And the character that I just mentioned, Sagumi, he is a guy who knows how to play piano. He didn't really kind of want to learn, but he's kind of kept it up throughout the years. He's really big in the music, and he shares a moment with June early on in the film because she won't talk, but she feels free to text. So very much, we've had friends of the show who are nonverbal and they communicate via assistive devices. So that's kind of predicting that maybe that's a commentary on something. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading a little too far into that. But he says to her, well, you know what? You say talking hurts. It gives June this ridiculous, almost Mr. Satan-esque stomach ache. But he says, well, if you sing, then you're not really talking, are you? And she's like, that makes a certain degree of sense. And what you get from then on out is she starts to explore herself, her emotions. And when she finds herself put on this committee of people that have to put on this community outreach play, because a lot of kids in the class are like, oh man, this is so friggin' dumb. I don't want to do a musical. But she kind of gets the ball rolling, and this other kid in the class, who I wouldn't exactly call him a bully, but not exactly the school cheerleader either, this other guy named Dai, is like, well, look, if this girl can stand up and do something we all thought was impossible, why aren't we trying? And everybody gets behind it. And the musical they were going to do, they're like, well, we could do The Wizard of Oz. And people are like, it's not so much. But June comes up with this idea. She starts writing a play based on her experiences under the egg curse, and it starts getting reinterpreted, and Sagumi starts picking popular music, working with this computer music club, which, let me tell you, when I was in high school, that sure as hell didn't exist.
I mean, there's also that club those guys in that club have one of my favorite lines in any anime film ever.
And what's that?
And that is voice actors are 2.5D.
Yes, I saw that. I mean, and it's so weird. And this may be just a cultural observation, and I'm coming completely from the outside here. But it seems like schools in Japan have a lot more interesting stuff. I mean, my experience with the Canadian education system in the 90s wasn't particularly great. But by seeing games like Persona 5 and all that stuff. I see there's a lot more clubs and things, so maybe that's a thing that just is. I don't know. If we have any listeners from Japan, what's it like? I'm curious. So things start going well. However, as June starts working closer with Sakumi, she starts getting closer to him. And you think they're getting closer together too. You really genuinely think they're going to become an item. But it turns out he's got feelings for somebody else. It's this other girl who's like a cheerleader. She's like this like honor student. She's basically the quote unquote goody two shoes. And there was a moment in time where something could have happened between Sagumi and her. I think her name is Nito or something.
It's Natsuki. Natsuki, yeah.
And there's Juno overhears a conversation between those two. Let me tell you, those moments in high school are entirely too fucking common, where a person overhears something they shouldn't, or they misinterpret something that they shouldn't. And it goes down so many strange paths in this movie. Like, it's a movie that it's tropey at times, but you never feel offended by it, because I could see situations like this very easily playing out. There's just moments in this where it made me think of some of my own experiences, and not in a bad way, actually. Like I said, when it comes to having moments misinterpreted, missed opportunities, maybe coming back again, and just kind of living in that moment. But going back to the ending scene of this movie, and then Ken, I really want to hear your thoughts on this. There is a moment between those two where June has run away on the night of this play, where she's going to be playing the lead heroine because she can sing now. And like I said, where she's yelling at this guy, and he says to her, "If I hadn't have met you, I would not have known how to really express myself. And it's because of you I became a better person. I was more free with my emotions. I'm not perfect, but you have a beautiful gift. You have an exceptional voice, and you have a beautiful heart." And it's just one of those moments I didn't expect to catch me like that. And it's funny, I remember a conversation my wife and I had years ago, because she kind of writes off some animation as just being kids fare, or when you think of anime, it's always Gundam Wing or Dragon Ball. And then we watched a movie called Wolf Children, and she bawled her fucking head.
Yeah, my favorite of Hosoda's work.
And it's one of the, I think Anthem of the Heart has one of those moments where, depending on how your life has been and the life experiences that you draw upon, this movie can hit you particularly hard too. So we'll talk about that in just a second. So Ken, share your perspective of this movie, because I've been just kind of going on for like 15 minutes here.
So my relation to this movie is actually through the writer, Mari Okada, who did a series that I was really into called Anohana, The Flowers We Saw That Day. It is one of the most emotional roller coasters of a show, and if you do not cry at the end of that series, you have no soul. Is how I like to define it. But I was at my local theater, and I was thinking, I was just like seeing something that day, and I saw this little like standee poster thing saying, "Hey, we're going to screen this next week." And it was this movie, Anthem of the Heart. And I'm like, okay, what the heck is this? I just saw the poster in the title, and I'm like, all right. And I looked it up, and I saw Mari Okada's name on it. And I also saw some of the staff members of Anohana were attached. And I was like, ooh, okay, this is interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and check this out. And then I went to see it theatrically, and I was blown away. It struck me so hard, and it's it it has easily become one of my favorite films of all time. I spent an exorbitant amount of money, like 120 US, to get the Blu-ray, which is an import from Japan. And yeah, it's a very expensive Blu-ray. It's one of the best sets that I own, not only because it's expensive, but because it actually has very high quality to it. But it still doesn't fail to make me cry. Same point every single time. And that it's actually two specific sequences. It's the sequence in the abandoned love hotel where she goes and confesses everything to Takumi, and then the other sequence is the song that she sings when she comes into the play, and that is Watashi no Koe is the name of the song, and I believe it's based on like it takes the music from like a Christmas song. I don't know off the top of my head, but like the lyrics are what hit me the hardest, and it's just like I'm finally free to say everything that I want to say, and it just it breaks me. It really breaks me. And again, this is one of like my top 5 favorite films. Period. That goes across everything, and it hits me hard. It really.
While kind of watching this, like one of the things that I took away from this is, like I was mentioning earlier, words are powerful, and June even says words are something you can never take back. And it's funny, as we record this episode, I just posted something on my personal Facebook, and it's a quote by Edgar Allan Poe. And the quote is, "Years of love have been forgotten in the hatred of a minute." And then somebody in that same comment thread posted this, and it made me think of this movie a lot. Years of hatred get forgotten in a moment of love. And there's something about the human experience when it comes to love and being vulnerable that I think a lot of people are just scared of. And I'm not saying love recklessly.
Mario Kata is best at. Like, her writing is so distinct and so key to why everything that she touches just works so well. And also, like, instantly, she is the kind of writer where I instantly know her dialogue immediately. Like, within the first 5 minutes of a show, I can tell, oh, Mario Kata worked on this.
Yeah, there's something very powerful about this woman's writing that I definitely want to see more of it. Like, it makes me think back a lot to when I was in high school, and there were girls that I liked. Fortunately, in my case, it mostly worked out. Although I can think of one very specific instance where it took many years for it to work out. And I've probably told this story on the podcast before, but I'm just going to frame it in this instance. I was dating a girl. I was in probably grade 9 or 10. and we were just kind of messing around. We were playing hide and go seek, like we weren't really at that age where, sexual things had really come into stuff. And I hid behind a door, and she didn't know that I was there. And I jumped her, and I scared the crap out of her. And she fainted, like legit fainted. I'm like, oh shit. So it's almost like she fell in super slow motion, and I caught her. And as her eyes began to open, like I could tell she was with it. I have only had 3 people in my entire life look at me like that. My wife and 2 others. And that's kind of when I got awoken to what love, experience, and what true human emotion really, really, really is. And in that moment, I wish I'd said something. Like the words caught in my throat. And it's like this girl could have asked me to do anything, and I would have done it in that moment, just because I didn't want that moment to end. And it took me years upon years to say what I felt in those moments to her. And in that moment where she's looking at me, that's the moment I could have had my first kiss when I was like 14 or 15, and I didn't do it because I was a chicken shit. And years later, we finally got a chance to kiss a couple times, and it closed a circle. And while I was watching Anthem of the Heart, I got thinking, I wonder what would have happened had I said something. And I very much think about the multiverse, right? How for every decision you make, there's a reality where you do make that decision. And I was actually talking about this with a poet a couple of weeks ago. Her name is Cindella. She was a feature poet at my local poetry slam. And I thought about it. I don't have regrets anymore because I like to think this. Somewhere in the vastness of existence, there is a reality where I did that thing. So why should I feel bad about it? Sure, I'm not living it, but a version of me is. And I'm perfectly fine with that. And I don't know, this movie stirred up a lot of heavy thoughts, a lot of heavy emotions. And if I've learned anything by letting Ken pick movies, don't watch these things before you go to bed, and don't watch these things right first when you wake up. Because holy shit.
Yeah.
The next one.
Sorry, I mean, I will say
warned me.
One of the I warned you, but also one of the funniest. This has probably one of my favorite endings for a Mario Kart work, and that's the fact that Daiki says, "I'm gonna go confess that I love June," and then it just ends on June's shocked face.
Yeah, that kind of took me by surprise. I was like, "Well, good for her." But yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, like I said, don't love recklessly, but at the same time, don't be afraid to share it either, because you never know what the results are going to be. And I know not everyone's going to subscribe to my multiversal love theory, because I'll admit that does sound pretty fucked up. But yeah, like in this instance, the situation didn't turn out the way that we all thought it would. I mean, she didn't end up with Sakumi. Dai ended up with June, presumably. And maybe those two who missed each other, maybe they found each other after this movie ends. I mean, I like how it's left up to interpretation. It's a lot of romance movies in the Western world the guy gets the girl or whatever. Basically, the romance closes. In the 2 romances that you've shown me, Ken, it doesn't end up like you expect. You expect a happy ending, but it also goes a little bit off to the side. So the next movie that we're going to talk about is called Your Name. This movie, as of this recording, we're recording this on Thursday, September 29th. I fucking bawled. My roommate Shannon came out here. She's my roommate / sister. She goes like, Michael, are you okay? And I didn't realize how much tears were running down my face. And I was just like, yeah, after we're done this recording, I need to go out into the woods and decompress for a while. Because like, oh my God, that was friggin' heavy. And not in a bad way at all. Like in a remarkably good way. And can explain this movie because it's a weird concept, but it's easy to relate once you explain it, I think.
Yeah. So I'm pulling directly from the synopsis. It's not the Crunchyroll synopsis because Crunchyroll doesn't have a synopsis because Crunchyroll likes to not put
just hire some kid
shit.
for a few weeks to write things. But yes, continue.
Yeah. Mitsuha Mizu is a high school girl and yearns to live the life of a boy in the bustling city of Tokyo, a dream that stands in stark contrast to her present life in the countryside. Meanwhile, in the city, Tachibana lives a busy life as a high school student while juggling his part-time job and hopes for a future in architecture. One day, Mitsuha awakens in a room that is not her own and suddenly finds herself living the dream life in Tokyo, but in Taki's body. Elsewhere, Taki finds himself living Mitsuha's life in the humble countryside. In pursuit of an answer to this strange phenomenon, they begin to search for one another. And that is the best way I can describe it without spoiling any of it.
Yeah, this movie takes a frigging turn at one point, which also seems to be another Ken special. Movies that completely pull the rug out from under you. In fact, we're going to have to spoil it, but this movie could have went into our time travel show. And
exactly, which is why I was very specific when I was trying not to spoil this, because I knew it was coming. It was possibly going to come up.
It's something I didn't see, and it's like quantum leapy, but not. And it makes me think of something. And this is what made me, not quite what made me cry, but it brought up a very specific childhood memory. And it's so strange too. So, I thought this was going to end up like some Rama half sort of thing where they like just body swap and they try to live each other's lives, and it would be about understanding the other sex. That's what I thought this was going to end up being. And it totally wasn't. It was this, I don't know. It's like searching for someone or something, and you don't necessarily know what that is, but when you find it, you'll know. And it's kind of beautiful because it's one of the things about the human experience that I think is almost nearly universal for all of us at some point, is you have that moment where you meet somebody and you know them from somewhere, or you feel instantly at ease with somebody. And it's just that instant feeling of comfort and whatnot. And it could be your best friend, it may be your romantic partner, or maybe it's a romantic partner where things didn't necessarily work out. And that's where a really strange memory came up for me. Like, you find out during the course of this movie that there's time travel involved, but not Back to the Future or Bill and Ted. Like I said, it's very quantum leapy in the regards that the time is 3 years has passed and this girl is gone. And the guy's like, no, this is not true. Maybe I can fix this. And he stops dreaming and he starts to forget her, but he's obsessed, but he doesn't remember why. And eventually he basically asks the powers that be, if I can fix this, please let this happen. And somehow whatever higher power gives him basically the equivalent of one day. You got the chance to fix this, do it. And the grandmother is like, oh, you're not my daughter. Who are you? And she's like, and the guy is like, well, how the hell did you know? He's like, well, on certain days you act different. I just didn't think anything of it because it happened to me when I was a kid, but I forgot everything. And he tries to tell them that there's this impending disaster, and the disaster with what it is didn't see coming either. Which I thought that was really cool, actually. And you get this incredible story of two people that are trying to do the right thing. And they both say very early on in the movie, we both don't want a relationship, but they very clearly care about each other. But it's not a connection based upon mutual attraction. It's just what each other did to bring out the best in each other by living differently, but also thinking differently. And they were just, eventually they do kind of figure out very early on, they can leave each other notes. Either they might write something on their arm. So very, what's that movie? Memento, but they also start leaving each other text messages on each other's phones, not to each other because they don't know who each other is. And I had also kind of figured out during this movie, like, well, couldn't they have just called each other? No, because exactly. Because time. And but at one point his journal and his memories start to fade, and he's trying to remember her name so much that he's like, I don't want to forget you. I don't want to forget you. And something stays in him and drives him forward to keep looking. And it drives her forward too, because she wants to save her town, but she wants to remember her. And they both look at their lives a little bit differently as the movie starts to come to an end. And there's a moment where you think it doesn't matter in the middle, and they start talking about the concept of magic hour, which is a photography term, or the twilight hour. And that's the moment where the sun is just getting ready to set and it bathes everything in this golden light. If you're a photographer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And they meet during this very small sliver of a window, and they know each other's names, and they're like trying to, like, I don't want to forget you. How do we do this? We've only got just a couple of minutes here. And they start to, but then fate steps in and pulls them apart. And that reminds me of something. And this is something, Ken, I haven't thought about in about 30 years. So one time I am driving across Canada with my grandmother. I'm probably about 12 or 13 at this time. So I'm just becoming aware of what liking girls is really like. I'd had a couple of girlfriends in elementary school. It didn't really work out for me, but I knew, right? And me and my grandmother are driving down one of the interstates in the States. We're traveling across North Dakota, I'm pretty sure, actually. We're going out to Edmonton, Alberta, and we figured it was easier to cut across the States. We get to see more, and it's stuff that I'd never seen. So anyway, we're driving, and we go through this small town, and we pull up beside this vehicle. And in the back seat, I see this girl, this incredibly cute girl. She's probably pretty close to my age. And our eyes meet for just a few moments. And as we're pulling away from them, we just keep looking at each other. And I can tell you, even to this very day, I remember what I felt in that moment. It's like, I know you. I need to know you. But it was like, it's almost like you randomly came across your soulmate in Walmart and you passed them and you didn't even know it. And there's that cliched saying how there's somebody out there for everybody. And for a long time, I've really thought about that memory, just running across them, because I remember this, just as we were pulling away, she turned down a different road or a different part of the highway. And because she was in the back seat of her car or like a van or something, she looked at me and she put her hand on the window, like, as if you're saying bye to somebody, but it was something a little bit more meaningful than that. And while I was watching this, this movie stirred up that emotion pretty hardcore. And even right now, as I talk about it, I don't know what that memory means. Yeah.
It, like, I experiencing this movie, like, I knew this was super huge. This movie made gangbusters in Japan. Like, this is insanely, this was the most insane, super huge hit to come out of Japan. And everyone was talking about it. I was hotly anticipating seeing this, and like within a very small amount of time, Funimation announced that they had gotten the rights and they're going to release it in theaters, and it took 9 months. 9 months from the time Funimation announced that they were going to send it out to the world, and then it came out in like February the next year in the States. And I had no idea what going into it. All I knew was the body swapping, that was it. And when the big bomb drops and it's revealed that it was time travel, I broke down.
Like, because you want these people to end up together, and when you find out that she's gone, my heart sank. Like, I paused the movie and sat back on my bed thinking, okay, I maybe need to go to bed now because I don't know how to deal with this. And that's something I did not expect out of a movie like this. Because like I said, it starts off so goofy. I mean, there's even a line where the boy character Taki is like, hey, can you stop spending my money on sweets? Because that would be really nice. And you think it's going to be a goofy comedy at times.
There's a great joke that credit to the dub team, because they did a great job at translating this one joke, because it's a very specific Japanese style joke where it involves dialects, and they translated that to the whole guy gal joke where Taki's talking with where Mitsuha as Taki is talking with his friends, and she starts using guy gal and all that stuff. And with the Japanese version, she's using a completely different dialect of Japanese with Taki's friends, and they're like, wait, what did you just say?
I caught that, and I was like, that's weird. I didn't know they had regional dialects over there. Again, forgive my ignorance.
Yeah, it is really... It is a great translation of that joke, and it still stands as probably one of the best translations of a joke in any piece of anime, in my opinion. I haven't seen everything, so I can't really say for a fact that it's the best, but it's up there.
Like, I was surprised how well this movie was dubbed.
Great. Oh, well, here's the thing. It took 9 months for them to do it.
See, I would figure it would have taken shorter time, but I guess the time that they took that 9 months, I guess somebody knew what they were doing.
Yeah, on top of the fact that Rad Wimps completely redid the entire soundtrack in English.
The soundtrack for this movie is phenomenal. Like,
this was the first partnership with Rad Wimps and Makoto Shinkai, the director and writer of this. Makoto Shinkai's work is very mixed up into this point. I think all of them up until Your Name are kind of just blah and not all style over substance kind of pieces. They're beautiful. Every single one of his works is absolutely beautiful. But this is where he started finally finding a good voice to have for his writing. And this also kind of this was the second of what I like to call the Makoto Shinkai verse. This is directly connected to Garden of Words because there's characters from Garden of Words that appear in the background. Also in Weathering with You, Mitsuha and Taki appear in the actual movie of the follow-up to this, which was Weathering with You. And then also Makoto Shinkai's next film, which already premiered in Japan over the summer and is coming out via Sony and Crunchyroll early next year. That the main character is actually the daughter of Mitsuha and Taki.
Wow. Yeah, I want to see this. This sounds fucking awesome. Like, there is one of the things about this movie, and I just figured out a way to put this into words literally just now. From the way the movie presents itself and its characters, there's such a vulnerability and there's such a likability to everybody that when you realize the danger that this disaster is going to bring and how the clock is ticking and how there's a very reasonable chance the clock's going to run out before they can ever meet each other at the proper time. I haven't had a movie make my heart ache before. Like, I'm not going to lie, if I was going to Poetry Slam tonight, I'd probably be writing something out of this. In fact, like I said, I'm going to decompress after the show and just kind of touch grass, so to speak, because of this. This is one of those...
And I mean, the song that plays during the big sequence, Sparkle, every time I hear that song, it brings those emotions right the fuck back.
Yeah, like, it's pretty. And like I said, the moment that makes it for me was right at the ending where Taki and Mitsuha pass each other on the subway. And like I said, that's that moment that I experienced as a kid in a different perspective. I wonder where that girl is today. I hope she's happy. But I don't know. Like I said, this movie makes me really take stock of the people and the relationships that I have in my life. I mean, I'm happily married. Things could have taken a very different turn many, many, many years ago if I hadn't ended up where I am. And I don't know. I'm more appreciative today in a lot of ways. And I had a conversation with someone today on Twitter, and they were very upset about some unjust things that had happened to them. And I told them to not lose hope. This movie actually gave me a good dose of hope in the arm. Like, things may seem bad, and the situation may even seem dire to impossible, but these characters never lost hope. And even when they were starting to forget each other's memories, they kept hoping that they would find something or someone, and it kept driving them. And they found each other, and where they, as you mentioned, looks like they end up together and they have a family. that's kind of beautiful. It's like I said, it's one of those movies I didn't expect it to go like this, and I never expected another anime movie to punch me in the gut. But allow me to keep the frigging scorecard. So, Anthem of the Heart, punch me in the gut. Your Name, punch me in the gut. Grave of the Fireflies has punched me in the gut. Wolf Children has punched me in the gut. So, what's going to be the top 5 one that punched me in the face next time?
Probably A Silent Voice, if you ever watch that.
Ken, you're gonna have to. Yeah, like I said, I'm so frankly in love with this idea of having something so utterly incredible presented to me in a form that a lot of people in North America just aren't aware of. Like, this is a movie I want to show Blair. Like, I want people to see this as easily as they can. Like, I am enamored.
Also, Sony has the rights to do a live action that currently
through Paramount
is in production hell. I think it might be through Paramount. I don't know, but I know J.J. Abrams is a producer.
Nope, stop, please, no, fuck off, lens flares.
Yeah, that's the. He's just a producer. He's just a producer role. He has no qualms about directing
Good,
it or
thank
whatnot.
Christ.
But
like,
yeah, he's just
this
a
is
producer
the movie. I could see this being one of those anime adaptations that actually works if they turn it into live action. Although one sequence in this movie that I don't know how well it would translate, because I think if you did it with live action, it would look really goofy. But we live in an era of talking raccoons and trees, so nothing is off limits. Plus Taika Waititi and his bizarre Thorness, whatever. There's a moment where Taki is, I guess, floating through time, and there's a moment where he's holding on to this braided ribbon, which represents the intricacies of time, fate, and everything being intertwined. That sequence is gorgeous. I want to see that in 4K. I'd be really afraid to see that scene translated.
Sadly, that is not. Your Name was never released in 4K. And Shinkai, the only other Shinkai's Weathering with You was released in 4K, which is the sequel to this. And Shinkai, admittedly himself, has said, I don't make films for a Japanese audience. I make films for everyone. And sometimes he, especially with Weathering with You, specifically the way he wrote the ending, he knew going into producing that the Japanese audience would not, a lot of Japanese audiences would reject it, specifically because of certain decisions that are made by certain characters in that movie. And he specifically said in an interview, I want to see what the West thinks of the ending, because it's a much more Western ending. And I knew full well going into making this film that I was not making it entirely for the Japanese audience. I was making it for a more Western audience.
Well, if this is what I can expect from this person, I am fully wanting to see more. I loved what I saw. Like, Your Name is one of the best anime movies I've seen. It's definitely one of the best movies I've seen this year. And I'm taking a creative writing course right now, and one of the textbooks that I'm reading almost completely dismisses stuff like this, saying there's nothing to it. It's trivial entertainment. And I believe any piece of art or literature or film, cinema, whatever, should leave you transformed after you see it. You should feel differently, even if momentarily. This movie did that for me in a very beautiful and powerful way. So I'm remarkably glad that I saw it. The movie looks fantastic. It's It's got some really funny moments. It's got a lot of heart in it. The performances by the dub, which I saw, are amazing, and you root for these people. And there are some scenes in this movie that would make wonderful animated wallpapers, which I think I should probably look that up actually on Wallpaper Engine. But yeah,
I mean, I've got a few.
yeah, like ultimately, I'm so glad that you've shown this to me. You haven't recommended me a single shitty movie yet. So thank you for that, Ken. I am very, very I'm very, very thankful for this. So how the hell do we follow this up now that presumably we're in spooky season? We should take on something more traditional, I think. And I know for most of this month, it's going to be me, Aaron, and Alex taking on, like I said, John Carpenter and a little bit of Mick Garris before we close out the month. But I know you, me, and JT will probably find something to do as Twig starts to race towards the end of the finish line, which is our holiday gift guide coming up at the very early part of December. We're already starting to gather material for that. We're also talking about a season 2 of our role play podcast. Going to be a different game master. So we'll be looking at that a little bit later on. So keep it locked here to thisweekingeek.net. But Ken, if people wanted to find the films that we've talked about today, where would they have to go?
So Anthem of the Heart is available to buy and rent on Amazon. And that is the only way to get it, or find it on the high seas, because that's the only other way. If you're not in the US and possibly Canada. I haven't actually checked whether it's on Amazon in Canada or not. But Your Name is widely available. It is available on Crunchyroll in both subtitled and dubbed. And yeah, you're going to have to search Your Name on Crunchyroll because it is not in the movie section, because Crunchyroll needs a lot of their back end fixed.
Yeah, for whatever reason, they just didn't want to hire a kid to do this over the course of a few months. Hopefully they'll get their shit together.
Well, I think that's mostly because and don't get me wrong, Crunchyroll has actually been incorporating some of the quality of life stuff that Funimation has had for years into their system. I just recently on this anime, we finished up our My Hero Academia rewatch series, and the dub of My Hero Academia has dub subtitles on it. So you can actually just have the subtitles play for the dubs of My Hero Academia, in case you're that kind of person, which I'm that kind of person. I like having subtitles on even English.
Same here, because I'm a little bit
stuff.
I'm a little bit hard of hearing in my one ear, so it's really nice to have that option. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of Loose Cannon. This got a little bit more emotional than I thought it was going to, so hopefully you've enjoyed my bizarre trip down memory lane and Ken waxing philosophical about some Japanese directors. Please, guys, check these movies out. I think there's a lot of merit behind them, and especially Your Name. If I had to recommend 3 movies this year, 2 of them you probably would expect from me. Bullet Train, because it's a lot of fun. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and go out of your way to see Your Name. Like I said, I know it's an older release. I don't give a shit. You shouldn't either. Go watch this movie.
Also, if you want to buy and rent Your Name, it is available pretty much everywhere.
So find a way to watch this, support it, and So anyway, guys, until next time here, we're going to begin sweeping up the popcorn that's on the floor, rewinding the videotapes, and rebuffing the discs. We have been.
And from this anime,
I've been Mike the Birdman saying, until next time, folks, be kind, rewind. We'll catch you guys again next time, right here on This Week in Geek,
How I hope to have forever to spend this life. No, our future lies right here in this world with you.
Are either one of these any good? Sir,
What?
are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Quick, change the channel.
You're wasting your life making shit! Nobody cares! These movies are terrible!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.